we do have to allow for some, discomfort and inconvenience to ensure that we're being responsible when it comes to security. It is our responsibility. Nobody's going to do it for us. And if you don't have a palate for that, then you shouldn't be in this line of business.
Hey everyone, and thanks for listening to another episode of DIB Innovators. Today I'm speaking with Jared Shephard, Chief Executive Officer at Hypori. Jared, thanks for chatting with me today.
Oh, I appreciate you guys having us.
Yeah, no, this is going to be great. First of all, thank you for your service as a veteran. Let's start with that. Tell us about how, what you did in the military, and then how that's now transitioned into, your current role at Hypori.
Sure. Well, I mean, as also as a veteran, thank you for your service is always that thing that's always said, right? And it always makes you feel a little uncomfortable when somebody says it to you. But for me, my answer generally is always, it was my privilege, because it really was my privilege to be able to serve our country. And then the other thing I always say is I got way more out of the Army than the Army ever got out of me, I'm sure. So it's I'm not the typical CEO pedigree by any means. I was a high school dropout knucklehead that had some hard, times, mostly self-inflicted, that I ended up joining the Army to kind of, present some stability and have a future. I joined the infantry. I was got to spend some time in the infantry, got to spend time, got to go through sniper school, got to do some other cool stuff, and ultimately got sent to Fort Hood, Texas this was in the late 90s, like 1999. This was in a time in which we didn't have a lot of budget, et cetera. And I ended up being assigned to a mech unit as a young non-commissioned officer. And our options were, I could lead people in painting rocks, or I could lead people in mowing lawns. And so I decided maybe this wasn't exactly what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I was either at the time going to go to selection and go try to be a Green Beret. I mean, I love my blue cord that's there behind me, but I was thinking about going and trying to be a Green Beret. Or a buddy of mine was like, man, you should really go into IT. And I was like, well, what would I do in IT? Like, I wouldn't even know where to start. And he was like, you're a smart guy, you can figure it out, So I re-enlisted in part to get away from Fort Hood at the time to go learn IT. And God had a sense of humor, sent me back to Fort Hood again as an IT guy. But it was a great opportunity because I ended up catching the attention of the Corps commander, the 3-star that was there at the time, because of the infantry stuff on my chest. I got a chance to be a strap hanger in a room when he was being mentored by great leaders, very senior leaders in the government at the time. And it opened my eyes to the world. And I realized, it was so much bigger than I ever dreamed of. And I decided, I wanted to have a larger impact on the world. And that led to me making the decision that, I could either stay in the military and be enlisted and hope to have someday that level of impact. I could go commission and stay in the Army, for another 15, 20 years until I'm a high enough rank in which I could potentially have that kind of impact, or do my best as a civilian. And that's what I chose. So I decided to get out and become a civilian. And that was kind of my path. About 7 years in the Army, between infantry and comms. And here I am today, largely thanks to the Army.
That's great. You also then worked as a civilian, right? With the Army following that. So did you go right back to that, or?
I literally got out and got out as a contractor and became a contractor, brought right back to the 3rd Armored Corps as a contractor. And luckily, while I was, enlisted as a non-commissioned officer, I went and studied for some schools and got some IT certifications. And I have this brand new certification in this brand new technology called Microsoft Active Directory, because I had my MCSE in Windows 2000, and the Corps was trying to figure out how to get off of Windows NT into Windows 2000. So they brought me in as a contractor right after I got out of the Army. And that kind of started a cascade of opportunities for me. I mean, not that I didn't already have plenty, but we got tagged ultimately to go to war in OIF. I ended up being the lead technical planner for services with a buddy of mine as a lead network planner, and then another guy's chief automations. We got to build Iraq from scratch. I went as a contractor, but they treated me like a government guy, which was amazing for me and for my experience. We got to build an entire country from scratch, about 4 of us or 5 of us or so.
Wow.
And it was an amazing experience. And it kind of set the wheels in motion for me deciding that I wanted to do more.
And what all did that entail? When you say you built just built the entire IT infrastructure, or what?
Yeah, well, So when we went into Iraq, so when 5th Corps came into Iraq originally, they, the comms infrastructure in Iraq was all tactical, right? So it was, comms wire running across the ground, to tactical radios, use a TACSAT radio for bubs, etc. We got on the ground in December of 2003. General Metz was the Corps commander, and he took his first bub there, and and battle update brief. And after that, he called us all the 6 guys, called us all into the room and said, that'll be the last time I have to do a battle update brief from the radio. He's like, get me VTC up and running, get me, all the following things, and we were America's digital core, right? So we had a lot of that technology on hand. And so as we started to stand that up, General Metz brought us back in and said, hey, by the way, we're going to send home all the military comms. We were like, okay, like trying to figure out what that meant. And he ultimately was limited to a number of soldiers on the ground. And he was like, I need them to be combat armed soldiers so I can secure the battlefield. And he's like, I don't need signal battalions and signal brigades on the ground at scale, right? So let's minimize it as much as possible. Let's commercialize as much of the technology in the country as we can and move forward from there. And so that set to us, the planners, 3rd Signal Brigade, some of the senior leaders there, some of the senior leaders in 3rd Corps, to us sitting around a lot of dry erase boards and come up with a way in which we were going to build Iraq from scratch. And how we then ultimately contracted out and commercialized all of the Iraqi communications infrastructure in which we replaced most MILCOM with.
Oh, that's fascinating. What a story.
Yeah.
What an opportunity, actually.
Yeah. People tell me sometimes when they hear my story, like, you should write a book. And I'm like, well, if I ever do, the name of the book will be A Lifetime of Once in a Lifetime Opportunities, because I've just had so many of them that it's just more than I deserve, I am sure.
Yeah. So out of that, then you decided to start a company? Did that go direct? Or did you do some things between there?
Kind of. So we did, did OIF 2-3, came back in February of 2005 after 15 months in Iraq. My new boss comes in, a guy named Ray Odierno. Ray calls me in the office and says, hey, Jared, because I'm now his lead technical planner. And he calls me in the office with him and General Joe Anderson at the time and says, hey, I want you to go find a predictive mining and modeling capability for Prometheus-based modeling to disrupt the insurgency in Iraq when we go back to Iraq here in the end of the year. And I, of course, adeptly and intelligently responded, a what? And he was like, you're a smart guy, go figure it out, right? So, back then we used to call it predictive mining and modeling. Today we would call it AI/ML, and Prometheus is a doctrinal library type, essentially an ontology, a data ontology approach. So it's called political, military, economic, infrastructure, and security. And the idea was, could we use technology to identify events, information, intelligence, et cetera, to figure out ways in which we could undermine the insurgency without having to shoot anybody? Could we put military age males back to work? And rather than digging in roads and putting bombs in the road, could we put it back to work? And I got to go all around the world and see all kinds of really cool technology. And I get approached by a guy who was a guy named General Monty Miggs, who was standing up a brand new organization called JIDO, which is the Joint IED Defeat Organization. And then with some discussions back and forth between General Miggs and General Odierno and others, they ultimately, and I'm giving you a paraphrased version of the story, but ultimately I was asked to come in and be the first deployed J6 of JIDO. And I decided, you know what, I think I want to wear my own t-shirt. So I went and talked to General Anderson and who then told me he doesn't care whose t-shirt I have on. If it's mine, it's all the better, because then he can kick my butt if I do something wrong. And we went to talk to General Odierno, and I don't know if you know who General Odierno was or not, but great man, great leader. He it was a great mentor for me for a long time. A hell of a loss. But he comes and puts this maw of a hand on my shoulder. He's this giant human being, right? He puts this maw of a hand on my shoulder, and he knew my background. He knew where I came from and how I came. And he said, Jared, this is the American dream, to have come where you've come from, to have served your country, and now have the opportunity to start your own company. He's like, I think you should do it. And I'm going to call General Miggs and tell him I support it. And I didn't get back down the hallway to the G6 before I got a call from JIDO. And they were literally like, hey, we hear you're coming to be our new 6. So that was how my first company started a little over 18 years ago.
Holy cow. You are a man of firsts. That background of the J6 and your own company, that's fascinating.
Yeah. A lot of fun. And then it was a lot more time deployed Iraq, Afghanistan. We built the first ever COIC, which is called the Counter IED Operational Intelligence Center, where we use technology to target bad guy implementers of IEDs. And we were really successful in that. And they ultimately came in and said, hey, Jared, can you reproduce this? And can you build this in every division across Iraq, and then in every division in Afghanistan, to include the Joint Task Force headquarters? And so that's how my first company blew up and became big. And that was how I built my first company.
Oh, that's great. What a journey. Well, then how did you come upon Hypori? Like what made that change? Because
Well,
that company's still around, correct? I mean,
yeah. The company's still around. It's called Intelligent Waves. It's a great IT services company. And it's still doing out there doing great stuff. I was CEO of IW, and I had a guy named General John Holland who came to me, who said, hey, Jared, you guys do cool stuff. I have a hard problem. Ultimately, I need to be able to have people operate in denied space environments in a way in which doesn't put them at risk and doesn't target them. And so we kind of wanted to flesh that out, and we figured out what that meant was, how do we do what we call naked man? Like, how do you go into a denied space or contested environment with nothing, be able to buy a piece of equipment off of a host nation market and still be able to securely command and control without A, having a footprint that targets you, B, without having data in transit or data at rest. So you can't get arrested with something, you can't get, identified, etc. And so while we're trying to figure this out, we had started to build this network obfuscation platform called GrayPath that hides you on the network. And then we got approached by a couple of my technologists who were like, hey, have you ever heard of this company called Hypori? I said, no, what is it? And I said, well, we think it addressed the no data in transit, no data at rest problem. Okay, so it's a big part of our problem set. So let's talk to them. And I talked to the CEO, and it was actually the new CEO that the board had brought in. They had released the previous CEO. And I'm talking to him a little bit, and he ultimately tells me, say, hey, look, I'm actually here to turn the lights off. The company's run out of money. We're going to shut it down. It's going to go to auction. If you're interested, you could buy it. And I was like, well, how much do you want? And he told me how much he wanted. And I was like, I don't have that much money. And he said, well, come to Austin, Texas, and tell us what you can afford. And so I went to Austin, Texas, and I looked at the IP. I think they had 13 patents at the time. We now have over 30. Talked to some of the original developers. I made them an offer. I bought the original IP, and I hired 6 of the original developers. And thus that became what is now Hypori.
wow, that's pretty cool. And so, what is for folks that don't know, it's a unique approach to mobile security, but what is it, and how is it differentiated from other folks in the space?
Hypori is a NSA CSFC platform, which means NSA Commercial Solutions for Classified. It means it's rated to actually handle classified data on edge, which is really cool, but really small market. And if you think back on what I told you, how we originally created it and the mission that we originally created it for, I say that we were zero trust before zero trust became a thing. What we did was we came up with a operating system that was originally server-based, that's now cloud-based, that's accessible from any edge device anywhere with no data in transit and no data at rest. And the platform by design assumes that the edge device is compromised. Because remember, the original use case, we knew that you were going to buy a phone off of a host nation market that was compromised, and the network was likely compromised. So we built it for that purpose. So once we accomplished that and did it at scale and kind of figured out, well, wait a second, we just created a platform that enables any user to have access to a secure environment from any edge device. And the edge user, the device itself, does not present a risk to the protected environment. And the protected environment gets no control, permissions, or visibility into the edge user's device. So it's the panacea. It's the edge user can access secure information without risking the information, and the edge user doesn't lose any privacy in the process of doing it. So Hypori, what it ultimately is it's a virtual mobile operating system. So essentially an operating system that's hosted in cloud that only streams rolling encrypted delta pixels to the edge device. Kind of like, think of the old days of like a mainframe. And you remember the dumb terminals on the edge of a mainframe where it didn't do anything other than just present an image that you interacted with keyboard and mouse? That's pretty much Hypori. It allows your edge device, your personal edge device, to interact like a dumb terminal with protected data, but it doesn't actually ever get to be in possession of the data, so it can't compromise it.
That's great. And so that obviously big opportunity in the military space, with that sense.
Well, so like that classified mobility play, we were like, oh, that's really cool, but the use case is like this,
yeah,
right? And then it was like, well, wait a second, this is BYOD. This is like, you could actually truly use your personal device to do this. And so we started asking around, and DISA played with the idea a little bit, and we didn't get a lot of success there. And ultimately went to Army Futures Command, and luckily some of these guys that I had served with for a long time in Iraq and Afghanistan were now guys that were in good leadership positions. And I said, hey, look, I want to prove that this works. And he was like, okay, I'll ask my 6 to support it, right? So they brought us into their cloud environment to test us, and the Army plus DISA ultimately decided, they were either going to make or break us, right? So they called up the director of test and evaluation in the threat systems management office, and they sent him in a red team us for a full week. We can debate whether or not that was a friendly thing or not, but the good thing was it worked out for us, because at the end of that, they debriefed and went back to the DoD CIO and said that we're the most secure mobile platform they've ever tested to date. And we have since been through 7 different agency red teams and have succeeded through all of them. We're NIAP compliant, NIST compliant, FIPS compliant. We're IL4, IL5, FedRAMP, high ready. We're all kinds of things, right? So we spend a lot of time around the security of the platform. Now that we're a BYOD platform, we've actually had to lift and shift. Now we're really focused heavily, not just on the security, but on the user experience, right? Because we want to try to make that user experience as close to as native as possible. So essentially, on my personal phone, I can have multiple phones. I can have a government phone, I can have a corporate phone, and then I can have my personal phone. And those things never cross over each other.
Yeah, and that's you. I hate carrying on multiple phones.
That's our sales pitch, right? Don't you hate carrying multiple phones?
Yeah, that's I guess. So that's great. So how was it then? Obviously great dual use. So was the government, that was your prime,
that still is our biggest
your
customer.
beachhead. Okay.
Yeah. So the Army now, we are the Army's mobile BYOD platform, or at least one of their portfolio. That means us and Microsoft. I would argue that we're the one that is really hyper focused around protecting your privacy. You can get to, in fact, I can show you. Well, I can't show you, but I could show you. I have NIPRNet on my personal cell phone, so I can actually get to DoD NIPRNet from my personal cell phone on the Army's BYOD platform, and so can any service member in the Army. We also just recently had the Air Force and Space Force sign up, so we're now both their BYOD providers as well, enabling essentially a service member to be able to get access to NIPRNet, fully PKI enabled, so they can do NCOERs, OERs, awards, adjust their HR, they can get to Outlook, Teams, do Teams calls, all that with no data on the edge device, with no control of their personal device lost to the military. And in the case of like a classified information spillage, they can't take your phone because the data was never actually on your phone in the first place.
And so have you found there's a good commercial market for this?
So like I'm a visual guy, right? So I like to draw a Venn diagram, right? Now center circle is the DoD, and then we start, okay, logically, you can't eat the whole dragon at once, right? You have to take it one bite at a time. What's the next step? And like, what are the overlapping things here? Well, defense health, right? So DHA and the VA, the director of DHA today is a regular Hypori user. She has, I think, almost 100 of her staff on Hypori as well. VA is running a pilot right now. The VA actually has over 600,000 cell phones in the VA. Since we're roughly a quarter of the cost of a cell phone and more flexible and more secure, that's a heck of a use case, right? Then on the other side,
good business case.
And then on the other side of the Venn diagram is the defense industrial base, right? So if you think about, CMMC and CMMC compliance, and the fact that now we, the defense industrial base, have had this put upon us that we have some responsibilities when it comes to cyber resilience and capability. How do we meet those cyber requirements? Well, you got to have a 3PAO come and look at, your actual certification and whether or not you did all these things. Well, what we realize is, man, especially SMBs, small, medium-sized businesses, they can't afford to stand up an entire infrastructure, issue second cell phones, put MDMs on those second cell phones, manage those second cell phones. I mean, that cost becomes prohibitive, especially for the SMBs, let alone the bigs. We are a CMMC high compliant, or was it level 3 compliant, out of the box capability that you can buy as a SaaS. We can get you to GCC high, and you buy a service, a QR code goes to your employees, and ta-da, you have access to GCC high, and all for, or essentially our list price is $1 a day per user. So, that becomes a fraction of the cost of deploying infrastructure. Hopefully, that enables a lot of small, medium-sized businesses to be competitive, where otherwise it may be restrictive for them.
Yeah, it definitely takes the requirements to secure the mobile device, at least the compliance side of that.
We don't solve all the problems, right? But
Yeah.
we solve the ability for you to access from an edge device. Whether it's a iPhone, Android, tablet, PC, you can use us for access into a GCC high environment.
That's great. Very useful for a lot of different use cases. I would imagine that's your dragon you're gonna start eating more and more of that quickly.
We're gonna try to. We're trying to build out the sales team. We spend a lot of time and money on the technical side and making sure that the product works and that it's defendable and that it does what we say. Because taking critical mission security, at its face value, right? I mean, it's critical that we do it right. We can't mess around and screw that up. And so once we knew that the product was capable of doing that, and we saw the adoption in some of the hardest customers in the DoD that there is, now we're focused on, all right, how do we build a go-to-market motion? How do we do a sales motion? We think, our 3 verticals are going to be defense industrial base, healthcare, and finance, right? 3 of the biggest regulated spaces that are out there, that we offer kind of a turnkey protection in a regulated space.
Fantastic. So as you've both your companies that you split up, give me some lessons from your military service that helped influence your approach to running these, leadership, something that you've really hung on to.
Sure. I mean, I owe everything to the fundamentals of leadership that I learned in the military, right? Being a non-commissioned officer, being a combat arms leader, being responsible for the lives of others, and the mentoring, coaching, and growth of others, right? That became the basis for everything that I built upon. I guess I would say that there's so many things that the military will teach you. And I even on Warriors Ethos, which is a nonprofit I started almost, over 10 years ago, where I help other veterans get out of the military and be successful in what they do next. I tell people, like, leadership is one of the most important skills that you'll learn out of the military. But another one of them is actually followership. It's one that you almost never hear anybody talk about. The idea that not only can I lead, but I can also follow. I can operate within an organization. I can recognize the value and importance of those to my left and to my right, and I can help make them successful. I can make those above me successful, and I can help those that are below me, right? And that organizational technique of management that the military teaches so well, that really represents the NCO Corps and the younger officers in the military, is undervalued but oversought, right? I mean, all of industry is looking for that skill set, and it largely became the basis for me to believe that, as a veteran, I can do anything if I just surround myself with the right people, right? If I just find the right people, I can move mountains, right? And so far I haven't been proven wrong. So it's really key about, be a good leader, have a good moral and ethical code, stick to it, and surround yourself with good people.
Yeah, and the civilian sector military isn't 100% like that either. But yeah, that leadership technique or perspective on leadership doesn't always exist.
It's
On the commercial side.
I found it everywhere. It's not as ingrained or appreciated in the commercial world as it is in the military, especially when you talk about the post 20-year combat military. So a lot of the veterans getting out of the combat experience, that has value all in itself.
Yeah. Well, talking about warrior ethos, I think that's fantastic. You give them back and help, and let's share with the.
Well, I told you my background, how I got into this. I mean, for me to be able to have the opportunity to start my own company or companies, and to be so much more successful than I ever dreamed of being, it is my obligation to find a way to help other veterans be able to accomplish the same. But it really came to me as an epiphany. I told you General Odierno was the guy who kind of encouraged me to start my first company. I was in a briefing in Iraq with him, our first counter IED briefing that we had, and he gave a speech that caused me to have an epiphany. And my epiphany was around the idea of the ultimate sacrifice, right? And the ultimate sacrifice, most of us learn when we were young, the ultimate sacrifice is dying for your country, right? After listening to what he had said, it changed my view on that. And is that it's bigger than that. It's more than that. The ultimate sacrifice is giving some part of who you are for something greater than what you are, right? And that can be dying for your country, which is by far the most extreme example of that. But it can be losing a limb. It can be being injured. It can be watching somebody you love or you care for, or a friend, die. It can be spending time away from your family in the name of your country. There's all kinds of forms of that come. And when I had that epiphany, and I decided, when my very first company, I think I had like 2 employees at the time, I was like, man, I'm going to find a way to give back. And I started giving back the way a lot of people gave back. I started writing checks to the Wounded Warrior Project. And I think after my first 18 months of running my company, I wrote my first $134,000 check to Wounded Warrior Project. And General Odierno actually came and presented it to them on my behalf, which was really, really cool. And I got to interact with a lot of wounded soldiers at the time. And because of that, I found that I would ask them one question that always elicited an emotional response. And sometimes it's happiness, sometimes it's anger, confusion, fear, you name it. But no matter when I asked it, it would always return a passionate response. And the question was, Okay, what's next? Okay, you've been injured, you've been hurt, you're going through recovery, but what's next? And what I found was that question didn't just apply to wounded, that applied to everybody, right? That applied to people who were in the military for 22 years, 25 years, 30 years, 7 years. It didn't matter, right? What's next? Because the Army will spend years, or the DoD will spend years teaching you how to do your job, but it can't spend years to teach you how to be successful in what's next. So thus, Warriors Ethos was really born out of the idea of what's next. How can we help veterans become successful in what's next?
That is awesome. And so what does the program entail? Is it
So Warriors Ethos is when you come and you get enrolled into Warriors Ethos, we ask that you come and do it about 12 months before you separate out of the military or within 12 months of separation. We help you with, kind of coming up with a plan. We, both around family, finances, and career. And then, we have professional resume writers. We have mentors and coaches that will come in. Like you come in and say, hey, I'd really, I get it. I was a pilot, but I really want to get into cyber. Well, cool. Let me introduce you to a guy who's been doing cyber for 15 years, and he'll tell you what you need to do to get ready for that, right? And so it's trying to make those relationships, both mentor and coaching, into what's next. Provide the skills, make sure your benefits are applied for correctly, make sure you have a good resume under your belt, make sure you know how to interview to that resume. You can speak to the language that's in that resume because it's not going to be full of military acronyms. That's pretty much what Warriors Ethos does. We don't go find you jobs. I'm a big believer in the idea that we want to, help you fish, not fish for you, because, you'll be much more proud of what you have, once you have it.
How many folks have gone through it?
Oh, by now, I don't know, a couple thousand maybe. I wish it was 10 times that, but it's been largely kind of a small nonprofit that just a handful of donors and myself have largely funded. We are now spending a lot of effort in trying to get it to grow. Brought in a new executive director, a guy named John Farrell, who's great, former Air Force E9, has a lot of experience in the nonprofit world. He's going to help us try to make this scale because, there's a large percentage, 20% of the military ETS every year, right? Or separates from the military every year. So it's a real problem and it's a scale problem. So we want to try to figure out how to make Warriors Ethos scale to do more.
That's bravo. I love it. And for folks, how do folks, if they're interested in, being a part of this, donating, how's the best way to learn more about that?
Yeah. So easy one there is warriorsethos.org. So WARRSETHOS.org. You can go there and check it out, click volunteer, click sign up, click contact us. We're always looking for help. There's, one of three ways that you can always help. The easy way is, we always need money to help drive this. That's good. That helps pay for the transition counselors, for the resume writers, for the stuff like that. We need volunteers. So we need coaches and mentors. We need people who have successfully transitioned, who are willing to raise their hand and say, hey, I'll help somebody else do the same thing, because I'd love to give them the lessons I learned from when I did it. And then lastly is we ask everybody, if any of you out here are listening to this, you're in a hiring manager position, go hire veterans, right? We, and especially if you're part of a bigger company, go challenge your HR folks and ask them, hey, what is the equivalency to a 4-year degree for a veteran, right? Do you allow a veteran with 6 years of service to be an alternative to a 4-year degree? Those kind of things, what is the experience exception for a veteran? Somebody who's been a pilot for 6, 8, 10 years, is that the same as being a project manager? And are we willing to give them credit for doing that? Those are the challenges that we have to ask big companies so that they do have successful veteran, hiring programs, which many of them have built good hiring programs.
That's fantastic. And I'll definitely be going to look at that.
That's awesome.
Appreciate what you're doing there.
Yeah.
Well, back to, kind of the defense industrial base and how you figure that. How do you think that startups should, how do you look at approaching the challenge of balancing, security, vice usability with trying to bring on new technologies?
That is the center of my battle every day, right? If you look at the good feedback that we have, it's people love the security, the freedom, the privacy, all that other stuff. You look at the bad feedback we have, people go, sometimes it's clunky and it's a bad network and that kind of thing. So, that is what we live every day. And so for small businesses, they face the exact same problem. I guess what I would implore upon all of you is that if you choose to do work for the Department of Defense, remember that you're doing work for the Department of Defense. And remember that nation state actors, specifically those like China and Russia, have gleaned the absolute most amount of their data that they have stolen or used for us or against us from defense contractors. right? There haven't been massive widespread compromises of classified networks in which this data has flowed to them. What there has been is massive compromises of large defense industrial base contractors that they've lost proprietary information that has set those countries decades ahead, right? And has allowed them to catch up with us in a way in which they shouldn't have been able to. So I think, we do have to allow for some, discomfort and inconvenience to ensure that we're being responsible when it comes to security. It is our responsibility. Nobody's going to do it for us. And if you don't have a palate for that, then you shouldn't be in this line of business. That being said, though, nobody's as strong as all of us, right? So, create teams, find partners, ask for help and mentoring. There's plenty of people out there that are willing to do it. And I mean, I didn't get here by myself. I got here through a lot of other people, businesses, opportunities, mentoring and helping me. I would recommend the same for anybody else out there who's emerging.
Yeah, I think that's great recommendation. And your point is spot on. We have to keep them, keep our warfighters and our country safe by not giving away just like an open door policy to let China and Russia come in, because
it's not by accident. Yeah, it's not by accident. The Chinese Joint Strike Fighter looks a lot like our Joint Strike Fighter.
Oh yeah, it is not. We should not be training against ourselves because that's what the enemy has. Fantastic. Well, how do you see, two things? How do you think the cyber threat with AI is going to change? How will it impact, virtual mobile like workspaces like you've got, your technology? How do you see that playing out?
I mean, the advantages of virtualization, whether it's desktop virtualization or mobile virtualization, like what we do or anything else like that, is it minimizes or reduces the threat to the edge device, right? So if there isn't data on the attack surface, then it becomes a very benign attack surface. That puts more, onus upon defending the actual enterprise than it does the edge. I believe that over time, I think we're going to see more and more and more of that, whether it's through virtual platforms like mine or secure browser space or any number of other things that are out there that I think will continue to grow. I think, of course, device manufacturers don't want to hear that because they just want to sell you more devices, right? I think the threats are just going to become more active and more advanced. I think AI is going to enable that. In the near term, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see people who probably weren't a real cyber threat in any way, shape, or form can use AI to become a threat. I think in the longer term, we're going to see the really, really advanced cyber threats that are already out there, nation state actors, etc., become way more dangerous with the empowerment of AI. I spoke on a panel at one of the colleges here in Northern Virginia not long ago, and we talked about the impact of AI. And I believe kind of like they call it the Oppenheimer paradigm. I believe the AI ultimately represents our generation's version of splitting the atom. Right. And yes, it could be used for perpetual energy, or it could be used to wipe the species off the face of the planet. Which one it's used for is up to us. Right. And we have to prepare for both. And we have to work towards both the defense and the ability to use it for both.
Absolutely. Well, with that, where is Hypori going to be in 5 years?
Well, hopefully, Broadcom will sell me VMware here, in a few years. No, I think Hypori is going to continue to grow by order of magnitude. It's already seen tremendous interest in the markets that I talked about. I think we've grown year over year north of 60%, per year. I think we're going to continue to see that growth year over year for the next several years. And I would, really the reason I do this, I've already, hit personal success beyond my wildest dreams. We do this at Hypori because we believe Hypori will actually change the way the world does things. Think about it. The operating system hosted in cloud, mobile operating system, which, by the way, the whole world's going to mobile, right? 60-something% of all the internet traffic last year was generated by a mobile device. But imagine if I could give you a better performing platform because I can apply cloud resources against it, processors, RAM, backbone, etc. I could give you a better performing PC or mobile device than you could buy from Best Buy. And I could do it and allow you to access it from anything, to include your 72-inch TV on the wall, your tablet, whatever, your friend's PC, who cares, right? And I could do it all for, say, $9.99 a month. That, I believe, would change the way the entire edge market would work. I think it would also change the way in which enterprises work with their employees. Because the one thing that we've seen a massive trend towards, besides cyber threat, is also the demand for privacy. And controlling endpoints does not get you privacy. MDM and MAM and endpoint management does not get you privacy, right? What we have to do is we have to provide literal physical separation, not logical separation, but physical separation of enterprise protected data from personal data.
Yeah. The definitely opportunities there for, just cool spaces to really protect yourself and protect your company.
I agree.
Your company's assets and your IP. So that's great. Well, this has been awesome, Jared. I really appreciated, all that you're doing, for security for our nation, also for our warfighters. So really appreciate that. And it's been a blast. Learned a lot. I think you guys have a great thing going there. So I want to keep watching and see.
I'm excited too. I mean, we got a great team. We got a great momentum. We got great customers. We got a great mission. We have a great problem in front of us. I mean, it's the world is our oyster.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And let's stay in touch.
All right. I look forward to it. Thank you very much for your time.